everyone, and welcome to the last episode of season one. Thank you so much for joining us so far. We will have a last live session happening by the end of the year, but I'm very excited that we got all the way here and that you've joined us throughout all the interviews that we've had. Today, our guest will tell us more about business development. She has been living between the US and Europe for the past 12 years, traveling the world with every chance. She graduated magna cum laude from Georgetown University in 2012 with a double degree in foreign policy and Russian, and she is currently working in business development for the Silicon Valley technology company called Palantir Technologies. She is passionate about offering young people in Eastern Europe the same educational opportunities that she's had abroad. While in college, together with her friends, she co founded Aspire Education, an organization focused on discovering, developing, and connecting young leaders in Eastern Europe by offering them opportunities to engage with Ivy League professors, inspirational speakers, and mentors. Without further ado, please welcome my guest for today, Ana Sarbu. Welcome, Ana.
Thank you so much for having me. It's really great, and I'm honored to be part of your podcast. Congratulations on the great initiative.
Ana, thank you so much for joining us today. I want to share that I'm actually a alumni of Aspire Education. I joined the Aspire Academy level a few years back while I was still a student, and I was really impacted by the program. And what I found really inspiring was the fact that you brought a Ivy League education to a city in Romania, open to everybody who wants to apply. But of course, there are many Romanians who join, and I feel like that's really, really impactful because it brings a new level of knowledge and it brings maybe a new perspective in a setup that, let's say, maybe couldn't have happened. Make a difference for different communities of young people, and also make a difference for the way they develop and access different leadership positions. So thanks again for doing this. Ana, together with some of her friends, co-founded Aspire Education 10 years ago, and the program has different levels. So you have Aspire High School, Aspire Academy for students, and Aspire education for young professionals. So it's really focused on educating the next generation of leaders and giving them tools to understand the world in a different perspective. So thanks again for doing this. I would want to step into your business role to start with, because I think it's really interesting and it's something that I am interested to know more about. Your current role is business cultivation manager, and I would want to please let us know what does that mean. And of course, in the field of business development, what is it that you focus on?
Yeah, it's actually, the official title is business cultivation engineer. And I think they added the engineer because it's a bit of a tricky one, as I work for a technology company where the majority of people are engineers. And I think they wanted people like me, like non-technical, to feel special and have an engineering role, although we're not, that we come from different backgrounds. But so I work in a role which basically it came out, work in a technology company. But we work with software company, but we work with real world clients in government and commercial space, as well as NGOs. And the idea there was that you have to bring the software to these clients, and you need people to kind of be the intermediaries, or someone who's really kind of between our engineers in our company and the client. So having like an ear on one side and an ear on the other side, and almost doing like the translation. But the interesting part about it is, you're tasked with sort of growing the business, the client management part, but also you're representing the company at the client, so you need to understand, while you're not maybe technical, or it's one of the few non-technical roles in the company, so you might not be technical, but you need to understand enough of what we do to represent it on the client side. But you also need to have the experience of high-level client management, because we do work at a very high level. So it's a really interesting role. It's an interesting challenge, and I've been doing this for a couple of years now, and I can say it's cool to have engineering in the title, but by no means I have that background. I think it's more about the the engineering mentality, which matters, which is kind of the idea of solving problems, and we solve problems with technology. So.
Mm-hmm. And business development, so the field that your role functions within, what does it mean to you? Because in different industries, business development has different meanings. Of course, it's about growing the business, but what does it entail to be working in business development from your point of view?
Yeah, so I mean, yeah, the title is, of course, very, as you said, it means that roughly growing the business. For us, it means anyone who has an interaction with the client is considered business development. However, a couple of people within business development, like my role, are more tasked with the like high level client management and moving things forward. So what it means for us really, it's I think in some software companies you have business development is equal to sales, and it's very much like a sales role. Like you have targets, you have a list of clients, you like go over those clients. Like you probably have many clients at the same time. I think in our case there is a sales component to it, but we also handle very big customers, so it's actually not very realistic to have many clients at the same time, because these clients they undergo very complex digital transformation programs. So what it really means is like you're the point person from the first day you meet the client through the whole process of like having them understand what we do, but also understanding what they do and what they need, like meeting those needs, signing a deal, doing potentially like some sort of initial work to prove the value, then signing a broader deal, and then expanding that deal, as well as promoting maybe the deal for new business opportunities. So it is a very involved. It's almost like sometimes when you like buy a big company, like it's really a kind of it's a longer process than I think many people think of salespeople as just picking up the phone and like making a bunch of phone calls and getting deals like this, which it doesn't happen. These things are really sort of innovative, the innovative projects that take a lot of organizational change sometimes, and alignment and sponsorship and all these type of things. So for me, business development from my role really is making sure that our software is used by these, and I work in the commercial space, not the government, by these big organizations in sort of transforming their institutions by using data. So.
Mm-hmm. I really love the fact that you've mentioned from the beginning that it could be connected, this field of business development, with sales, because while you were saying that, I realized that I've never shared the fact that I used to work in this space for 5 years, and it meant sales. It meant sales strategy, it meant quotas, it meant strategies to attracting new clients, prospects, reaching out, sometimes phone calls, sometimes emails, sometimes LinkedIn. And if there's something that I would like to draw the attention to for the listeners, is that it's super important whenever you consider a career path to connect with your peers and ask, what is it that you actually do here in this company? Because I really think that it will make a difference. I really think that if you tell people like what you are doing, it will maybe give them a more like a better understanding of what that job can mean for a certain type of company. You work for a corporation. I used to work for a scale up.
Yeah.
So our jobs were different because we all had to grow the business, but I was focusing on contacting prospects on LinkedIn via a personal message. And you're probably dealing with proof of concepts and different, more high stake business meetings. And this is business development. You are growing the business. So of course, as a sum up of this, it's super important to do always some research and understand what does that role mean in the industry and the field that you're looking to enter.
And just like on that point is, I think that even when when getting jobs, this is my second job out of university, but I always sought to kind of have like my approach, and some things that I advise to people who are looking for jobs is to try to like meet as many people as they can, and really kind of have an idea of like maybe some qualifiers, what they want to do. So like what I would want to do, and it doesn't have to be very specific. Like it can be some just qualifiers of like, you want to work in a private or public sector, you want to work in international space or not, like all these type of things. But also like ask a lot of questions and get to know these people, as you said, and really understand in more detail. And I think there's some online resources for that as well, like Glassdoor and stuff like that. But I think just meeting people, if you can, use your alumni network from universities, from if you've attended Aspire, there's like a great alumni network for that. Other jobs, people that even on LinkedIn, randomly people can contact you, and just be open and to helping others, and as well as you when you look for something, try to like be pretty forward about getting this information, because I think that's, as you said, is crucial.
And to add to that, something that I've done that proved successful to a certain extent when switching careers and jobs, I transitioned from business development to product management, and I didn't know exactly what will my role entail the moment I start. I knew what I will be doing as an overview, an holistic approach of like, my role is to do this. However, I reached out to peers in Denmark, in the UK, in countries where I thought there are a lot of product managers that maybe I can learn from. I sent them a personalized note on LinkedIn and I said, look, I'm transitioning into this space. If you have any recommendations for me, books, podcasts, anything I should know about before I start, it would be really
That's
great
great.
if you could share something with me. And there were some people who replied and they said, well, welcome to the space. Read this book. One is called Empowered, the other one is called Inspired. And I was like, whoa, what is this? I mean, I've never heard of those books. But then again,
Yeah.
the moment you start doing research, you realize these are some standards readings for that industry.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
helped so much to ask a few people, because they actually replied and said, yeah, there's a list of must read, and I would really recommend you start with that.
And people want to
And
help, and I think it's what you did was really nice, which is like have a very specific ask, like be mindful of people's times. People are busy. Even if they want to help, they might not have time. But if you have a very specific like a specific question that's easy to answer, people will help. Like I'm sure they will.
definitely. And if you don't try, you don't know. Like if you
Exactly.
don't connect with somebody and ask for, help or advice, where will you get it from?
Right.
It's like shooting in the dark. So definitely recommending everybody to try to do this and connect with peers. I want to continue by asking you about the idea of serving mindset, serving the clients and the customers. Are there some takeaways for aspiring leaders who want to, grow their careers with this mindset of serving the customers? Any key thoughts or any key lessons that you came across that you think people should know when they work in this field and when they interact with clients on a daily basis?
Yeah, I mean, look, you have to definitely listen more than speak. I think it's one of those piece of advice that I try to give myself all the time, because I tend to speak a lot, or I get very excited about something, and then I tend to speak. Everyone wants to speak, so basically, like you kind of have to find the right balance between speaking and listening. But I think when you're in a professional environment, specifically for in a this sort of like serving your customer role and understanding your customer, you really have to know how to listen. You have to know how to listen. You have to know how to ask the right questions. So one of the most interesting things that I learned in this role is there are a couple of things around sort of how do you cast yourself in a meeting or in a one-on-one, like understanding where the customer is coming from, sort of like what status are they playing, status, like are you, and status is something that changes. It's actually like a flexible thing. Most people think status is like, oh, like I am high status in all conditions. No, actually sometimes you might want to play lower status to be more approachable, like, and kind of feel let the other person be comfortable, like sharing information, and sort of like let them play their status. So anyway, I think for serving your customers, so yeah, definitely have to listen. You have to understand where they're coming from. So not only who the customer is, but what their role is, and understanding like within that role and their position, like what are their incentives. And can you align your incentives with theirs? So there are really many lessons around, what it means to serve a customer, like when, they are in charge in the end, because, you're providing a service for them. But a lot of these things, or at least in my job and what I do, we try to form partnerships. So it's not the typical vendor relationship where, I pay for a service and then I control however that's happening. Like we try to position it in a way in which, like, well, we're helping you with something that's really complex and we are really good at this and you have to trust us, but we have to form a partnership where we understand what you want, you understand what we offer, and sort of together we bring those things and kind of achieve this transformation. So it's very it's a kind of involved getting to know each other type relationship, and that's why it takes a long time. And you need to prove, like my last point is that you need to prove value. So you need to prove value fast to get your foot in the door, because just talking, you can have a lot of conversations, but really the advantage is to move fast and show the value really quickly. And there's nothing better than showing that will gain customers' trust.
You mentioned something that I really wanna go back to. You said that it's important to ask the right questions. Are there any specific questions that you find yourself putting forward many times? Something about, what do you mean? I don't know, something in order to dig deeper into a subject. Is there something that comes to mind?
Well, you always ask the question of what are your priorities? I think that's sort of the most important question. Like, that's the thing that we start, like, give us your hardest problems. What are the things that you are trying to solve that are big and difficult and that are very core to your business? Of course, these problems have to do with data, and many times they have to do with, well, we have this information, but we cannot use it, so we cannot ask even simple questions, but then from the simple questions you get more complex questions. So I think that the question that I ask all the time is what are your problems? What are your priorities? And the third most important question, although that actually in the back of my mind is the first, but I only get to that later, is really who cares about it? Because maybe, yeah, and that's back to the point where, like, understanding the customer, especially, and the role within in the organization of the person you're talking to, and their incentives, because maybe you're talking to someone and it seems like their problem is really important and really interesting, and maybe it's something that you really want to solve because you think, oh, this is a perfect problem for us to solve. But maybe that person, maybe they're not the decision maker on a bigger deal, or maybe they're not making the strategy. Or maybe this is their personal thing, not a representative of the organization. So it really, the question is, does this matter? And does this matter for organization as a whole at a strategic level?
And very well also added regarding priorities, when it comes to thinking about the subject from the company perspective, because you need to go there and present ideas that will help a client, and you need to prioritize what will you share first in order to grab their attention, in order to say, I'm good at what I'm doing, I'm here to support you, let's start with this marvelous idea, this is priority number one based on your needs. And if we can move this idea of prioritization into our personal lives, I do want to share the fact that I know of people who struggle with, what should I do next? How should I divide my time? Who should I spend my time with? Why am I unhappy with my surroundings? And then I always wonder. To be honest, I've been starting this process maybe a year ago, but I really think about, okay, what is really a priority for me right now? Is it to spend time with my family? Is it to get a new job? Is it to create another environment at work? Is it to create a personal brand? What is my priority right now? And then I'm going to focus that extra time or that time that I have in the afternoons to work on that, because that
Yeah.
became my priority. And it can
Yeah.
be the same when you're looking for a job or when you're working with a client. You make your own priorities and you say, okay, this client might be unhappy, but our priority as a company is to make his or her boss happy with the entire decision.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a very, like, as you said, priorities shift, priorities are different. On the professional level, I mean, for us, like, we're not experts in the fields that we work in. That's why we have to listen very carefully to customer and have them use our software to solve the problems. But we have gained some some industry experience, obviously having worked in all these places, so we can talk about from experience of like what we've seen work. And then on a personal life, I think what you said, is very true. And I think of it a little bit differently. So I think priority for me, when I say priority in a personal life, it's a bit too, I don't know how to say, like not a harsh word, but you can't really admit to someone that they're not a priority for you or something. So I try to think about it more about, sort of breaking things down. Sometimes you think everything's overwhelming, or you're having a bad day and you're like, oh my God, the world is terrible. My day is awful. My life is awful. Like when you start making these sort of crazy type of very emotional statements, which I think we all do, I certainly do many times, just try to ask yourself, okay, my day's awful. Why is my day awful? Let's break it down. Well, it was awful because I actually woke up late, and then it meant that I didn't have my breakfast. Okay, it was awful something, blah, that's fine. We can control that. But maybe it was awful for something else that we can't control. And then like once you start breaking it down, you can also sort of like take actions and fix things. Similarly, yeah, when you're thinking about, well, I have so many things in my life, which ones do I want to focus on? Like kind of breaking it down. Like maybe it's a period of now I want to focus on this. I've discovered that I'm very happy this week to be, with sort of creative activities. Try to do that. Want to play the piano every day? Like, yeah, sure, do it. Have a routine. Don't be too strict on yourself. Maybe the next week you're not feeling very creative and you all just want to, I don't know, sit on your couch and watch Netflix. Like indulge in that a little bit. I'm a very big proponent of sort of being a bit nicer to yourself and a little bit more caring. I think we tend to be very strict sometimes on things that absolutely have like make no sense, like no one's imposed. We have a lot of impositions already in life. Of course, have discipline, but be also nice to yourself.
Very well said. And if I can add on that, I feel like when you started talking about the personal prioritization, I immediately had a thought of self love and always deciding yourself, is it me who's a priority? When I moved to Denmark, for me, that was a big culture shock because being Romanian, we tend to always want to please others and
Mm-hmm.
help
And
people,
overperform.
even if they haven't asked for our help. Don't worry, I'm here to help you. And then I started my new life in Denmark with the exact approach of me trying to help you. And people were a bit like, but I didn't ask you to. Like, it's okay if things will not end up my way. I'll try again. And for me, that
Yeah.
was a huge culture shock because it's just not something that I grew up with.
Yeah.
And when I started to realize how people put themselves first and they don't give themselves such a hard time for not performing up to a certain made up requirement, I realized that this takes a lot of weight off my shoulders
Yeah.
and really makes me enjoy what I'm doing more, and also makes me decide, you know what, maybe I actually don't want to do this project.
Yeah.
Maybe I was just trying
Process
to
of
be part of it.
elimination is really a great thing to have, by the way. Like thinking about what you don't want to do, then you end up like actually having a couple of things that you really do want to do and focusing on doing them much better. Yeah, but we can be, I mean, it's overwhelming. There's so much going on and we also have so many tasks and things that maybe we think are important but they're not, or maybe things that are easier to fix, but actually you realize that you're spending so much time doing small things. So you always kind of have to think about, okay, what are the things that I have to do, and dedicate some time for the important ones, like a bigger task, work on that, and then work on the smaller ones as well. But like, don't sort of just go through your list of small things and then you're so exhausted by the end that you can't even like focus on the bigger task that you might have. So yeah.
Mm, very well said. I want to ask you one last question about a relationship with customers, because I am interested in what do you think about the expression "the customer is in charge," and more specifically, how do you tackle situations when you know you need to advise your customers differently than what they think they want?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's you have to do it slowly. I think initially you kind of have to so that's why it is a relationship. That's the whole point of a relationship management, is that you get to know each other, and you understand what they want, and they understand what you do, and hopefully they start trusting you with, you know, the advice that this is the way that we should be doing things, which is better. But of course, in the beginning, that's hard because you have no history. Really getting access to an important problem, one that's strategic, is key. So making sure that you're talking to the right people who can give you access to that problem. It does happen sometimes that the problem maybe isn't so big or let's say, like, you know, maybe it's a priority that they really want you to see solved, but like maybe you're kind of actually looking at something broader or bigger. But it's important to kind of say yes in the beginning. You have to say yes, and one of the big roles of, like, one of the big parts of this role is to say yes a lot, but then kind of yes and meet in the middle, like yes, but also like, this is how we will do it, or we should do it. Yes, of course, like that is important to you. We'll solve this, but give us access to these extra problems as well, because these will you know, enable you to grow even more, and let us prove that. So it takes time, it takes knowing, and it takes getting access to a problem is really important, and you shouldn't throw that opportunity, because you can't really say no. You might not get a second one, but you also have to make it as such as, you know, you sort of talk about what you've seen being valuable, and kind of like what the next steps are, making sure you're kind of looking at the bigger picture.
Mm. Very, very well said. I'm happy you put relationships on top of the idea of exchange, because it is a relationship building process and not just an exchange process of I'll give you something and you'll give me something back. It's more than that, right? And it's super important to have that mindset when working with clients, both in B2B but also in B2C, when you think about your users as people who, once they become loyal, they will always look up to you to provide more value. And it's so important to have that sort of loyalty from users and feedback and hear their opinions. I'm gonna go a bit back, and I would like to understand more who is Ana, and how did you create your career. Can you tell us more about how did your upbringing influence your career in Silicon Valley, and how did it kickstart that?
Yeah, so I think, you know, it's really easy to have the in hindsight conversation, and to say, oh, it all makes so much sense, right? Like looking back, it all makes so much sense. The reality is it doesn't. Like it kind of, life sort of brought me here in a place where I don't think I knew. So I guess for my upbringing, there are a couple of things that were important. I was raised to sort of be pretty open-minded and free in my thinking. I was lucky to have an older sister who went to study in the US, and she advised, sort of looking at me and seeing how I am and how what are the things that I'm interested in. She advised me to go to university in the US. So then, I prepared for that. And then once I got there, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. So I went as undeclared. I kept my options open. But I stayed very curious, and I'm naturally very curious, and I wanted to discover what is there to offer. So that way, I actually decided on the major, or like the specialization that I had in university, which is, government, basically focused on international politics, foreign policy, and then Russian, just because I was studying Russian and I liked it and I thought it was cool to study. So basically, like, it kind of step by step thinking about, okay, what is out there, and let me try it out, and what do I like? This is something for me, is it not? Choosing a career or choosing a workplace, my first workplace, wasn't an easy task, because I think I was again faced with this, and I think this is something that everyone's faced with at some point, which is the pressure between what is considered good from external, what is like something that is desirable, like a job that is desirable, and what do I want, or what am I good at? And for some reason, at least when I was in university and still before in high school, the what do I want wasn't such a strong thing, or it was more important to focus on what is desirable. I actually think things have changed recently, because I think we have more openness. There's more diversity in jobs. There are more ways to find jobs. At the time when I was in university, there were only a couple companies that recruited on campus, and a lot of these were, in finance or consulting, big companies with good training programs, probably good salaries. But to be fair, I applied to these jobs and I didn't get any of them because I didn't really want to do them. And I don't think I was good. That was not my way of thinking. So that forced me a little bit, kind of having these mini failures, if you want to call them, but still trying. It forced me to adapt and think more. And this is a piece of advice that someone gave me when I was looking for a job at around that time. And I was like, well, I'm not getting any of these things. They said, you have to figure out what are your qualifiers, like a couple things that you want from your job. And it's all about the first job. Once you get the first job, everything else comes after, like the second job, the third, like the hardest thing is to get your first job, I think. And basically the first job, he's like, what are your qualifiers? So my qualifiers were, well, I want to live in New York. I want to work in a private company, but that also hopefully works with government. I wanted to be international environment, maybe speak languages because I have this background, which is, I think, important, and a small place where I can get a lot of responsibility. Basically ranking those and saying, well, some are more priority than others. And once I kind of had that in mind, I had absolutely no idea what this was going to be. But things started, something came up and I'm like, well, that kind of meets my criteria. So that's pretty interesting. And it was actually this strategic communication and advisory firm founded by a guy who used to organize the World Economic Forum. And it literally ticked all my boxes. And I was like, this can't be. And my background also matched what they were looking for. So that's kind of how I got my first job. And then my second job, having asked myself a lot of questions in the 2 years of my first job, I realized what I liked, what I didn't like, what I wanted more of. And then one of the things that I really started being interested in is using technology to solve problems, but also solve problems that are in large scale. I think, again, hindsight gives us the benefit of saying, oh, it all worked out, didn't it? But as a colleague of mine in university advised myself and this another friend of mine, it all sounds desperate right now, but trust me, relax, it's all going to work out. So yeah, I think, of course, there's some luck involved. And I think we probably right now, it's harder to give that advice given that we are in a bit of an uncertain world and, pretty dire economic situations for a lot of people. So we have to be sensitive to those things. But I do think there is a lot out there. Sort of don't lose hope and try to find some things that you think you're interested in terms of qualifiers, and really reach out, meet people, talk to them. And the good thing is that you can actually probably much faster find what you want when you're not getting some stuff. So
I would be curious to know, what would you do differently looking back? Considering your career and the decisions you've made, is there something that you would have done differently or something that you've reflected upon?
Yeah, I mean, I think probably I would emphasize, I would double down on emphasizing how I was different, or, like not how I was the same. I think we all try to be the same as everyone else, but actually that's not a competitive advantage. That's, disadvantage if everyone's the same. So I would probably try to emphasize my differences more, focus on them more, and try to, be a bit more confident in those differences and in my abilities. I think I've gained that in time. I wasn't always at that same level. So I would just double down on those. And the second thing that I would do is write my thoughts down, like reflect and write them down, because I reflect a lot, but I don't always write things down. And I've started doing that a bit more recently. And I think that really helps kind of looking back.
That's very good. And I mean, I've mentioned this idea of journaling already so many times in this podcast because a lot of the guests mention it. And it's also a way of letting those things on paper and not thinking all the time back of like, oh my God, this is coming up. It's like, I have a worry about it or I've learned something from it. It's on paper. Let's move on and let's see how life progresses. And I feel that's a very good piece of advice also that you've reflected on and now you're implementing that in your life right now. I want to ask you, what is the most rewarding thing in your current role?
The most rewarding thing is seeing the impact that we have by solving problems. So it is a very much applied tech. That what we do is you couldn't get more applied than that, and very sort of mission oriented company. So we solve really important world problems. From and recent examples of how do companies and how do governments respond to the pandemic and manage supply chains or collaborate on research and all these type of things. Like these are real problems. I think it's really rewarding to see these problems, to see the impact that we're having. There's nothing more than kind of seeing a piece of news or kind of an internal email saying a lot of the stuff we obviously can't share. But things, someone saying, well, we countered this child exploitation, we found a child exploitation ring, or this organization did that, or stuff like that. Or there are really some really kind of important problems that we're solving. That's very rewarding. And on a direct note, seeing your clients happy and impressed with the work that's being delivered is also highly rewarding, because that is much, it's like super close. You see that, and you've built that, so that's really nice.
Mm. I would like to sum up with any advice for anybody that's looking to follow your path.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think for my role, it's very important to have this sort of client management experience. So like having that background, like building that background is really important. And if you're able to have this sort of client engagement opportunities in whatever role or whatever capacity that you can, try to have that, because I think that really teaches you a lot about some of the things that I was saying earlier. The other thing is really kind of bias towards action. Start now. Start, like, don't wait for anything or for anyone. Just roll up your sleeve and start doing things. And I think kind of you don't know where they'll get you. And look for the things that make you different. It's important more and more, especially in my field, and it's always been the case, but seek to do the things that are maybe different. Don't be scared, and you might end up in a situation where you get this opportunity, and you're able to really articulate some of the learnings that you've had from across all your experiences before, and hopefully get a job in this place. And maturity matter a lot. Because you have it's such a high touch role. If your company is letting you go in front of the client to represent them, that's like a really sort of given a lot of responsibility. So you really have to prove your experiences in the past where you've had to have this responsibility and maturity. I think that's the most important piece.
Very, very, very accurate. And also, before we end the interview, I would really want you to tell us more about Aspire and what does this program represent, and how do you think a program such as Aspire is impacting the educational world, but also how do you think it impacts generally the professional world through the people that they go and they join these programs?
Yeah, definitely. And thanks for asking that. I think the reason we started Aspire, the main reason is, of course, we wanted to give the educational opportunities to talented and very well. Romania has an incredible amount of talented people, and I think I hear that every day when I meet someone abroad or whatever, I'm traveling, someone was like, oh, you're Romanian, I know, or like someone will have some story with some really great Romanian person that they know. So I think there's a lot of talent, and the idea was, of course, to offer some of these opportunities that we had. Myself and my co-founders all went to study abroad in university in the US and some UK. So we wanted to give the opportunities of the educational part, because at the time, I think there was a lot less of that, and like the live experience of being in a classroom with a Harvard professor and the method that they're offering. I think that's something really special. But really, the more special thing, or the bigger thing that we all got from our experiences abroad, was this idea of being part of a community that is very supportive, and kind of meeting people who are you can share so much with, from intellectual pursuits to helping each other on like the career front, to friendships, to so like really sort of deep relationships that you form, and these bonds, that there's something quite magical about that. And I don't know if I know, I think this is the sweet spot of recruitment. That's why these universities take a lot of time recruiting people, because they try to find people who will get together and will form something that's really special. And these support groups really that are lifelong. So that's kind of what we wanted to recreate at Aspire, because we realized that while there are a lot of talented people and they had started already traveling abroad and maybe studying abroad and having some more opportunities than they did when we were in high school, the overall network was lacking. So the fact that you went somewhere, but then you got back and then you felt really excited for a while, but then you kind of, that all sort of went down because you didn't find that people to share that with. People didn't understand what you're doing. And frankly, like, yeah, it was just very difficult to find other people to share and form these much deeper relationships that, as I said, span several fields. So that's what we wanted to do. We wanted to find these very talented people. We wanted to give them some of the opportunities to hear from these world-renowned, professors, experts with really cool courses that they were doing, and methods, and speakers and entrepreneurs, and get inspired, but also form bonds that would outlast that your 1 week summer program, and create an alumni community where people will continue to support each other. They would build projects together, giving them the opportunity to, the people from the first generation started organizing and leading Aspire like onward. So like very practically having these experiences together, as well as supporting each other on anything from job search to university applications to whatever it was, and forming deep friendships, which I think has happened. So it's really impressive every time we go to Aspire, or we go to an Aspire event, to just see the level of joy and love that exists within these communities. And it really, there's no better sort of feedback than seeing that, to know that we've created something special there.
And I can only confirm and congratulate you for doing that, because it was a long path, and it was also very much inspired by your own experiences and the fact that you wanted people to have those as well. I can confirm this very warm spirit that continues even when once you finish the programs that usually last around a week. And this year they were obviously digital, and a bit the format was changed. But I was then part of the alumni club, and I was invited to host a LinkedIn webinar on personal branding. And I was so surprised to see some of the people from my cohort that I'm still in touch with joining this and being like, I cannot wait to see your presentation, and I will join, and I will give you feedback, and I will try to support as much as possible. And I thought that was really inspiring to see that people come together and they do want to create something, even after years of joining the program and still being in touch. So congrats again on doing that. I think you have done a great job with the other co-founders, and you've really elevated maybe some opportunities for people that could have not gotten there in any other way. I will end with I will end with this comment. I want to thank you, Anna, so much for giving us the time. I'm sure you've gave some very insightful pieces of advice into what you're doing, business development, but also how to create something inspiring for communities. So thank you again for joining, and thank you all for joining us as well. Stay tuned for more interviews with inspiring female role models, and follow us on all social media channels.